The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as Princess Kate walked slowly down the marble hallway. Her footsteps echoed softly in the grand corridor. But today, something felt different. The usual warmth in her smile seemed forced, and the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed considerably. Palace staff noticed the change immediately. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had served the royal family for over 20 years, watched with concern as Kate paused at the portrait gallery. The princess stood there for several minutes, staring at a painting of Queen Elizabeth, her hands clasped tightly together. "Your Royal Highness, is everything all right?" Mrs. Henderson asked gently, approaching with careful steps. Kate turned, attempting her practiced smile. "Oh yes, perfectly fine. Just admiring the artwork." But her voice carried a tremor that betrayed her true feelings. The truth was far from perfect. Kate had been struggling with something deeply personal, something that had been weighing heavily on her mind for weeks. The pressure of royal duties, combined with recent family challenges, had created a storm of emotions she was finding difficult to navigate alone. Prince William had been away on official duties in Scotland for the past week, leaving Kate to manage their children's schedules and her own royal commitments. The distance had made everything feel more overwhelming than usual. She missed his steady presence, his reassuring words, and the way he could make her laugh even on the most difficult days. As she continued walking through the palace, Kate's phone buzzed with a message from William. "Coming home today. Can't wait to see you and the children. Something important to discuss." The message should have brought comfort, but instead, it added to her anxiety. What could be so important that he needed to discuss it in person? The afternoon brought a flurry of activity as staff prepared for William's return. Kate tried to focus on her work, reviewing documents for upcoming charity events and responding to correspondence. But her mind kept wandering, creating scenarios about what William wanted to discuss. When evening arrived, Kate found herself standing in their private sitting room, nervously adjusting cushions that didn't need adjusting. The children had been fed and were settled in their rooms, giving the couple privacy for whatever conversation lay ahead. The sound of footsteps in the hallway announced William's arrival. Kate's heart rate quickened as she heard him speaking with their security detail. Moments later, the door opened, and there he stood, tall, familiar, and somehow both comforting and intimidating at the same time. "Kate," he said softly, setting down his travel bag. His eyes immediately found hers, and in that instant, she saw something that made her stomach clench with worry. There was concern there, mixed with what looked like determination. "William," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "How was Scotland?" Instead of answering immediately, he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. The embrace lasted longer than usual, and Kate could feel tension in his shoulders. When they finally separated, William kept his hands on her arms, studying her face with intense focus. "We need to talk," he said gently. "About us, about everything that's been happening." Kate's breath caught in her throat. The words she had been dreading seemed to hang in the air between them. She nodded, unable to trust her voice, and gestured toward the sofa. They sat down facing each other, the space between them feeling like an ocean. William reached for her hands, his touch warm and familiar, yet somehow different. There was a gravity to his demeanor that Kate had rarely seen before. "I know something's been troubling you," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've seen it in your letters, heard it in your voice during our phone calls, and I think I know what it is." Kate's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for weeks, the relief of finally being seen, truly seen, mixed with fear about what would come next. She had been trying so hard to be strong, to handle everything on her own, but the weight of it all had become unbearable. "I've been struggling," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "With everything. The expectations, the constant scrutiny, the pressure to be perfect all the time. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to ask for help without seeming weak." William's expression softened, and he moved closer, pulling her hands to his chest. "You're not weak, Kate. You're the strongest person I know, but you don't have to carry everything alone." The conversation that followed was unlike any they had shared before. Kate spoke about feeling isolated, despite being surrounded by people constantly. She talked about the weight of representing the monarchy and the fear that she might not be enough. William listened without judgment, occasionally squeezing her hands to offer comfort. As the evening wore on, they discussed practical solutions and emotional support systems. William shared his own struggles with royal duty and the pressure he sometimes felt to live up to his father's expectations. For the first time in weeks, Kate felt truly understood, but their intimate conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. William's private secretary entered with an apologetic expression. "Your Royal Highness, forgive the interruption, but His Majesty the King requests your immediate presence in his study. He says it's quite urgent." William and Kate exchanged glances. Urgent summons from King Charles were rare, especially at this hour. Kate felt a new wave of anxiety wash over her. Had their personal struggles somehow become public knowledge? Was there a crisis they weren't aware of? "We'll continue this conversation," William promised, kissing Kate's forehead gently. "Whatever this is about, we'll face it together." As they walked through the palace corridors toward the king's study, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The quiet glance they shared before entering the room spoke volumes, a mixture of love, concern, and unspoken promises. The heavy wooden door to King Charles's study stood before them, and beyond it lay answers to questions they hadn't yet thought to ask. Kate took a deep breath, feeling William's reassuring presence beside her, and prepared herself for whatever revelation awaited them inside. King Charles stood with his back to the door, gazing out the tall window of his private study. The room was dimly lit, with only a few table lamps casting warm shadows across the book-lined walls. When William and Kate entered, he turned slowly, his expression unreadable, but somehow tender. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to the comfortable chairs arranged near his desk. His voice carried a gentleness that immediately put Kate slightly at ease, though her nerves remained on edge. William and Kate settled into their seats, hands still clasped together. The king moved to his desk but remained standing, his fingers drumming lightly on the polished wood surface. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the quiet ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. "I asked you here because I've been observing, and I've been concerned," Charles began, his eyes moving between his son and daughter-in-law. "As a father, and as your king, I cannot ignore what I've been seeing." Kate's heart sank. She had tried so hard to maintain her composure in public, to fulfill her royal duties without showing weakness. Had she failed so completely that even the king had noticed her struggles? "Your Majesty," Kate started to speak, but Charles raised his hand gently. "Let me finish, my dear," he said with surprising warmth. "What I've been seeing is a young woman carrying far too much weight on her shoulders, trying to be everything to everyone, while forgetting to take care of herself." The king moved around his desk and pulled up a chair to sit directly across from them. This informal positioning shocked both William and Kate. Royal protocol usually maintained certain distances, but Charles seemed to be abandoning formality entirely. "Kate," he continued, addressing her directly, "I want you to know that your dedication to this family and to the crown has not gone unnoticed. Your grace under pressure, your commitment to your charitable work, and your devotion to William and the children have been exemplary." Tears began to form in Kate's eyes. She had expected criticism or concern about her recent struggles, not praise. William squeezed her hand tighter, his own surprise evident on his face. "But," Charles continued, "I also see a young woman who has been trying to prove herself worthy of a position that was already hers the moment she married my son. You don't need to earn your place here, Kate. You already belong." The words hit Kate like a wave of relief and emotion. For years, she had carried the weight of feeling like an outsider who had to constantly prove her worth to the royal family and to the public. The king's acknowledgement of her struggles and his reassurance meant more than she could express. "I remember my own early years in this role," Charles reflected, his voice taking on a more personal tone. "The pressure, the criticism, the feeling that every move was being scrutinized and judged. It nearly broke me at times." William leaned forward, surprised by his father's candid admission. Charles rarely spoke about his personal struggles with royal duty, especially not in such vulnerable terms. The difference is, the king continued, I didn't have the support system that we can provide for you now. We've learned from past mistakes, from the pain that this institution has caused people we love. Kate knew he was referring to his late first wife, Princess Diana, and the struggles she had faced within the royal system. The acknowledgement of those lessons learned brought a new level of understanding to the conversation. Which brings me to why I really asked you here tonight, Charles said, standing and moving to a safe behind one of the bookcases. There are some changes I want to make, some support I want to put in place. He returned with a leather folder and several official-looking documents. Kate and William watched with curiosity as he opened the folder and spread the papers on the coffee table between them. First, he said, pointing to one document, I'm creating a new position within the royal household. A personal liaison who will work exclusively with you, Kate, to manage your schedule and ensure you have adequate support for your mental health and well-being. Kate stared at the document, hardly believing what she was reading. The position was comprehensive, including everything from scheduling support to access to counseling services and stress management resources. Second, Charles continued, pulling out another paper, I'm reducing your official engagement requirements by 30% for the next year. Your health and happiness are more important than any number of ribbon cuttings or charity dinners. William's jaw dropped. Royal duty had always been presented as non-negotiable, with very little flexibility for personal needs. His father's willingness to prioritize Kate's well-being over traditional expectations was revolutionary. But Your Majesty, Kate protested weakly, what will people say? What about the expectations? Charles smiled, a genuine expression of paternal affection. Let me worry about managing expectations and public opinion. That's my job, not yours. Your job is to be healthy, happy, and present for your family. The third document was the most surprising of all. It outlined a new approach to media relations specifically designed to protect Kate's privacy and mental health. Certain topics would be completely off-limits to the press, and there would be strict consequences for publications that crossed clearly defined boundaries. I should have done this years ago, Charles admitted, his voice heavy with regret. We should have learned these lessons before anyone else had to suffer through what you've been experiencing. Kate felt overwhelmed by the king's unprecedented support and understanding. She had expected judgment or disappointment, but instead found compassion and practical solutions to her struggles. There's one more thing, Charles said, his voice softening even further. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped box. This belonged to your grandmother-in-law, Queen Elizabeth. She left specific instructions that it should be given to you when you needed it most. With trembling hands, Kate unwrapped the box to find a delicate silver locket. Inside was a photo of the late Queen with her own children when they were young, and on the opposite side, an engraving that read, Strength comes not from perfection, but from love and purpose. The symbolism was powerful and clear. Kate was being welcomed not just as a member of the family, but as someone worthy of carrying forward the Queen's legacy of service and dedication. She saw in you what we all see, Charles said quietly. Someone who truly understands what this role requires, and who has the heart to fulfill it with grace. The conversation continued for another hour, with Charles outlining specific support systems and asking Kate about her needs and preferences. He listened carefully to her concerns and made notes about additional resources that could be helpful. When they finally prepared to leave, Charles stood and embraced Kate warmly. Another departure from typical royal protocol. The hug lasted several seconds, and Kate could feel the genuine affection and support in his embrace. Remember, he said as they reached the door, you are not alone in this. We are family, and family takes care of each other. As William and Kate walked back through the palace corridors, both were quiet, processing the unexpected support and understanding they had just experienced. The quiet glance they shared was filled with relief, gratitude, and a new sense of hope for the future. The following morning brought an unusual calm to the Wales household. Kate woke feeling lighter than she had in months. the weight of yesterday's revelations still settling in her mind. The silver locket from Queen Elizabeth rested on her nightstand, catching the early morning sunlight that streamed through their bedroom windows. William had already risen and was sitting in the window seat with his morning tea, watching the palace gardens come alive with the day's activities. When he noticed Kate stirring, he smiled with a warmth that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him years ago. "Good morning," he said softly, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" Kate stretched and considered the question seriously. "Different," she admitted. "Hopeful, maybe, for the first time in a long while." The changes King Charles had promised weren't just words on paper. Within hours of their meeting, Kate's new personal liaison had contacted her to arrange an introductory meeting. Dr. Sarah Matthews was a former therapist who had transitioned into royal household management, understanding both the personal and professional demands that came with the role. Their first meeting took place in Kate's private office, a comfortable room decorated with family photos and artwork from her various charitable endeavors. Dr. Matthews was warm but professional, asking thoughtful questions about Kate's daily routine, stress triggers, and personal goals. "The king has made it clear that your well-being is the priority," Dr. Matthews explained. "We're going to work together to create a sustainable schedule that allows you to fulfill your royal duties while maintaining your mental and physical health." Over the next few weeks, the changes became apparent to everyone around them. Kate's schedule was indeed reduced, but more importantly, it was restructured to include adequate rest time between engagements. Long days of back-to-back events were replaced with more manageable schedules that allowed for proper preparation and recovery. The most significant change, however, was in the atmosphere within the royal household itself. King Charles had clearly communicated his new approach to senior staff, emphasizing support over criticism and flexibility over rigid tradition. Palace employees began approaching Kate with offers of assistance rather than additional demands. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, noticed the difference immediately. "It's like watching a flower bloom again," she told her colleague. "Her Royal Highness has found her smile again. The real one." The children noticed too. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis began spending more relaxed time with their mother, who seemed more present and engaged during their interactions. Family dinners became longer and more animated, with Kate actively participating in conversations rather than appearing distracted by upcoming obligations. William found himself falling in love with Kate all over again as he watched her rediscover her confidence and joy. The woman he had married was emerging from the shell of exhaustion and pressure she had been trapped within. One afternoon, about a month after the king's intervention, Kate was preparing for a visit to a children's hospital. It was exactly the kind of engagement she had always loved, but had recently found draining. This time, however, she felt genuinely excited about connecting with the children and families. As she reviewed the visit details with Dr. Matthews, her phone rang. It was King Charles. Something that would have caused anxiety just weeks before. "Kate, my dear." His voice came through warmly. "I hope you're well. I wanted to check in and see how everything has been going with the new arrangements." "Your Majesty, they've been wonderful," Kate replied honestly. "I feel more like myself again, more able to give my best to the work that matters to me." "I'm delighted to hear that," Charles responded. "I also wanted to let you know that the media response to our new boundaries has been largely positive. The public appreciates our commitment to your well-being, and it seems to have strengthened rather than weakened their support for the monarchy." This news was particularly meaningful to Kate, who had worried that reducing her schedule might be seen as shirking her duties. Instead, the public had responded with understanding and admiration for the royal family's modern approach to mental health and work-life balance. The hospital visit that afternoon was transformative for Kate. She spent unhurried time with each family, truly listening to their stories and offering genuine comfort. Without the pressure of rushing to the next engagement, she was able to be fully present in each moment. One young patient, a 7-year-old girl named Emma, who was recovering from surgery, particularly captured Kate's attention. As they worked together on a puzzle, Emma looked up at Kate with curious eyes. "Are you really a princess?" Emma asked innocently. Kate smiled. remembering how that question had once made her feel uncertain about her worthiness. Now, it simply felt like part of who she was. "I am," Kate replied. "But more importantly, I'm someone who cares about making sure you get better, and that you know how special you are." Emma beamed and continued working on the puzzle. "I think you're a good princess," she declared matter-of-factly. Later that evening, Kate shared the story with William as they walked through the palace gardens. It had become their new routine. A daily walk together after the children were settled. Time to reconnect and share their experiences. "Father's decision has changed everything," William reflected. "Not just for you, but for how we operate as a family and as an institution." Kate nodded, fingering the Queen Elizabeth's locket that had become her daily accessory. "I keep thinking about what's engraved inside. About strength coming from love and purpose rather than perfection. I spent so long trying to be perfect that I lost sight of why I was doing any of this in the first place." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the garden path. King Charles approached, having spotted them during his own evening walk. This informal encounter would have been carefully orchestrated in the past, but the new family dynamics allowed for more natural interactions. "I hope I'm not intruding," Charles said as he joined them. "I was just enjoying the evening air and thought I'd say hello." The three of them walked together in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Charles spoke again. "Kate, I've been meaning to tell you how proud I am of the work you've been doing lately. The feedback from today's hospital visit has been exceptional. More importantly, the staff tells me you seemed genuinely happy to be there." Kate felt a surge of gratitude toward her father-in-law. His simple acknowledgement meant more than any formal commendation could. "I was happy to be there," she replied. "For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was making a real difference, rather than just going through the motions." Charles stopped walking and turned to face both of them. In the soft light of the garden lamps, his expression was gentle, but serious. "What we've accomplished here," he said, "is bigger than just solving one problem. We've proven that this institution can evolve, can learn from its mistakes, and can prioritize the humanity of the people who serve it." He paused, looking directly at Kate. "Your courage in being vulnerable about your struggles has made all of this possible. By admitting you needed help, you've helped us become a better family and a more compassionate monarchy." The quiet glance that passed between William and Kate in that moment held volumes of unspoken communication. Gratitude, love, relief, and hope all mingled in their shared look. They had weathered a storm that could have damaged their marriage and Kate's relationship with the royal family, but instead, it had strengthened both. As they prepared to head back inside, King Charles placed a gentle hand on Kate's shoulder. "The Queen would be very proud," he said simply. "Not of your perfection, but of your courage to be human." That night, as Kate prepared for bed, she looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone she recognized. The confident, purposeful woman who had married William years ago, now tempered with wisdom and supported by genuine understanding from her family. The palace that had once felt like a beautiful prison had transformed into a true home, filled with people who valued her well-being as much as her duty. The king's tender intervention had indeed said more than words ever could. It had created a new foundation for the future of the monarchy. One built on compassion, support, and the recognition that even royals are, fundamentally, human beings deserving of care and understanding.